In many Indian restaurants, this might simply be called lamb curry on the menu, with no explanation as to what cooking process was involved. I've taken the liberty of calling this lamb Bhuna because it most closely resembles that dish, technically, but you might have to think about what's going on to recognize it, because I've changed several things about the way it's made. I won't quibble about the exact name for this dish. Any way you look at it, though, this is an outstanding lamb curry that will taste as good as the best Indian restaurant you've ever dined in. I have 1.75, something like that, kilograms of lamb here. I've got some duck fat I'm going to first apply to the outside of the lamb. This is not only so that it'll be more tender when I'm done, but also to help the spices stick to it. Okay. And then I've got that spice blend that you saw mentioned in front. It's especially important to make sure that it's evenly coated here, because by the time this cooking process is over, the oil and flavor, everything, it'll be pretty homogeneous anyway. But pack it into the lamb as best you can. It's about 2 tablespoons of that spice blend. Okay, we've got the lamb coated. I've got handful of garlic here that I've smashed lightly under a knife. I'm just going to put this underneath the lamb. All the juices that run out of the lamb are going to make this like confit of garlic underneath it. Putting the rest of the duck fat over the top of this. You could use another oil, but duck fat is a nice thing to use for this if you've got it. Of course, not at all traditional for Indian food. Now, because of the incredible long time that it's going to cook, I'm going to cover this with foil first before I put this lid on it. I'm going to make sure that it's sealed really well, because we don't take any chances on moisture escaping. There's hardly any moisture in there, just the lamb fat itself. We don't want it to dry out and start burning. $10 later, after it's also cooled for a little while, that's what it looks like. I'm going to whip this out to a platter. Okay, and then this has to go through the strainer and then a fat separator. Okay, when you start heating the fat, it's going to bubble a lot at first because there's water mixed in with it. Even though you can't see it, the fat has got some water trapped with it. And as the water reaches the temperature boiling point of water, it starts escaping the surface. So you got to cook the oil until it gets past this point. Now the boiling starts to subside. You can see with an infrared thermometer it's approaching about 150 Celsius. It's considerably above the boiling point of water. Now it's actually stopping the bubbling, and you know that it's ready. That's the moment you're waiting for to add the spices. You don't want to get too hot so you burn the spices. You want it to get all that water out of there. This is like an indicator, built-in indicator. I've got 45 grams, it's a lot of spice, of that Rogan Josh spice mixture that was in the front of this video. We're just going to cook this just a couple minutes here. Not even a couple minutes, what am I saying? It's a few seconds, really. We just want to start it cooking in the hot oil, and then we're going to add the onion, the ginger that was coarsely chopped, and, well, actually, I'm going to stir this around for a minute. Just make sure it's well mixed. Now I'm going to add the tomato sauce. This will cool it way down. Make sure the spices don't start burning. Make sure you scrape the bottom of the pan. Get all of the spices that might be stuck in the fat at the bottom of the pan, because you don't want to have any of those burnt. So scrape the bottom of the pan real well. And now I'm going to lower the heat. It was on a 6. I'm going to lower the heat way down to 3. On 1 to 10, it's on a 3. And this is going to cook for quite a long time at a relatively low temperature. And here's about half an hour later. Still at heat setting of 3. As you can see, it's vegetables, onions are breaking down. It's getting gradually thicker, but it's got a long ways to go. Keep cooking. And in the meantime, while that's cooking, the lamb's been in the refrigerator for quite a while now. It's certainly cooled down, so we don't have to worry about it falling apart. So we're going to begin taking this off the bone and cubing up the meat. It's a pretty basic process, and you can clearly see where fat is and where meat is, and this sort of recipe, you don't want big piles of fat in it. It's just not going to be good. People don't want to eat that. So, cut it up into reasonable sized cubes, and make sure you get all the tendons and gristle and all that stuff, get that taken off. Okay, and after sectioning this up, we got 600 grams of lamb. We started with 1.75 kilograms. We ended up with 600 grams. Now, as you can see, there's some pieces that have a little bit of fat marbling in there. That's okay. It's going to dissolve into the sauce when we're cooking it the last time. But most of this is pretty clean. There's no fat. This masala has been cooking for about an hour now, and to use an infrared thermometer on Fahrenheit, we've got 136, about 60 degrees Celsius. That's about right. You can see this is actually quite a low temperature, which is one of the reasons why it's going to take a long time for it to dry out. That's a good thing, because the longer we let it take to dry out, the less flavors we will lose. There's still some chemical reactions that are taking place in here. I mean, the spices are becoming more mild, more cooked, as Indians would call it, a cooked spice. And that's a good thing. But it's been cooking for about an hour now. And now I'm going to add 22 grams of garlic, coarsely chopped, and cook this for a little bit longer. Stir it every once in a while. At least now that it's starting to get thick, it's going to need a little bit more attention. So before you could let it go, up to 10 minutes without stirring it, it'd be okay. Now it's getting thick. It's going to be more subject to burning. So you got to stir it every couple minutes. Really keep an eye on it now. Okay, it's been just under an hour and a half now. Now here's one of the funny things about this dish. If you've been tasting it periodically, and you should have been, you've been making everything the way that it should have been, it should have tasted pretty salty up till now. You might have even been worried. You're like, I don't know, this dish probably has too much salt in it. Now here's the weird thing about this. When it gets to the right stage, it will suddenly taste less salty. None of the salt evaporated. It's absolutely still in there, but there's some chemical reactions that took place that makes it now taste less salty than it did before. When you taste that, it should be somewhere around an hour and a half, 60 degrees Celsius. When you notice that, it's done. We're not going to reduce this down to nearly a solid like we do with some masalas. This is good enough. It's good enough. Now we've got the lamb stock that came off of the lamb that was cooked slowly in the oven. It's like a gelatin now because I kept it in the refrigerator. That's going to go in there. And then after this is combined, we're going to put it in a blender. Make sure that it's smooth. Get rid of all those lumps of garlic and onion. Now I'm going to go back into the pan that it was cooking in before. You don't have to wash this out. Just make sure that there were no solids left behind in the pan. That's fine. If you see any fragments of onion or anything, obviously make sure that those get into the blender. We've still got heat level 3, by the way. I have not changed that. Now that it's in there, we can finally add the lamb that was cut up into this. They're going to begin simmering the lamb in the curry, finally. And something else. The blender bowl that I've rinsed out with about a cup of water, about 300 milliliters of water, and that's going to add in here too. Because it's too thick right now, especially after because it's got to simmer for even longer. So I've still got a heat of 3. We're going to bring this up to a simmer and let it continue to cook slowly. Okay, it's been about 15 minutes now. It's been at a good simmer. I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of yogurt to this. Plain yogurt. Do not use low fat. Do not use some fruity sugar flavored yogurt, obviously. This is going to help mellow out the flavors a little bit, round them out, and it's also traditional. I have 30 grams, it's about an ounce of pecans in the spice grinder. I'm going to chop up. Those are going to get added to this, not only as a thickener, but also adds a really lovely flavor to this. Okay, now it's got everything in it. I'm going to lower the heat down even more, just below 2. On a 1 to 10, it's not even 2. And I'm going to simmer this and here we have just tiniest crack open here, tiniest crack open. It's going to simmer like this at a very low setting, about 1.5 to 2 on 1 to 10. Let's get out the infrared thermometer again, see what it's doing. I mean, 48 Fahrenheit, 65 Celsius. It's going to sit like this for a while. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.